Dark Side of the Ring, Season 2, Episode 8. Cocaine and Cowboy Boots, the Herb Abrams Story is the title of the latest episode that I saw, I should say. And it's all an all but forgotten story. Uh, you know, Herb Abrams pretty much is a footnote in wrestling history. A man who was very, very ambitious. He wanted to promote a different alternative to the WWE or WWF at the time, and even went as far as to try to promote the West Coast side of the WWF's talent, programming. Even went to Vince McMahon. Vince pretty much, turned him down, and that right there kind of lit a fire in him. And all he wanted to do was put Vince McMahon out of business. And that was his downfall, because we've seen what's happened with WCW, with TNA, other promotions who've tried to take on the WWE. People can complain all you want about the WWE product now. I do, and I tend to, but you can't deny that it's a name brand. When anybody talks about wrestling, they don't talk about the other promotions. They do to an extent, but everybody always comes around to the three letters WWE. They don't ever talk about anybody else first. It's always WWE first. And this was in 1990 when he founded UWF, the Universal Wrestling Federation. I remember seeing it and watching it, a little bit of it back in the day. Didn't last long. Lasted about a good year. And they even had a broadcast of a TV show titled The Fury Hour, UWF Fury Hour. And he had a lot of talent, guys that had just left WWE, and they were very much still in their prime. They were still viable. You had everybody from, Cactus Jack, Jimmy Snuka, B. Brian Blair from the Killer Bees. Had even seen Bad Bad Bigelow there, and some other guys who wouldn't have gotten a foot in the door, or even have any kind of success without his belief in them. I believe the wrestler's name was Steve Ray, and this is the guy that, at the end when they asked him about what he felt about the passing of Herb Abrams, and he broke down and said that if it wasn't for him, he wouldn't have gotten a shot. He wouldn't have gotten a chance. He lived a really high end lifestyle. The guy was all about cocaine and hookers, and the guy would always be naked. Whenever someone would go to see him, whatever, he was always in his red boots. That's the only thing he would wear. He'd be surrounded by cocaine on either dresser, hookers, seemingly around the clock. And the guy was very shady when it came to the money too. I mean, he would not pay his wrestlers or the venues or the cameramen or whomever worked for him. He had two accounts: one that was full of money, millions, and then another one was empty. And he would write the checks that go to the empty bank. And then he had guys threatening his life. He had wrestlers that were, hot, meaning hot. They were like mad and fuming, and they wanted answers, And the guy was just an example of someone who had all the passion, all of the, visions of grandeur, if you will, but he didn't know how to control his habits, which was cocaine, which was exorbitant amount of, spending his money. And the guy really didn't focus on the goal. His goal was he wanted to topple Vince McMahon, take over the wrestling world globally. But the guy couldn't keep his habits under control. He had a good friend that wanted to take him to rehab. The guy was erratic. The guy was, they finally got a pay-per-view going, right? And it was like a really big venue, and he only had about 100 people in there. They had to like darken the arenas, almost like what TNA did in their later days before Impact, before they became Impact, before they got bought out, and they're doing, I guess, decently now. But you know, Cactus Jack, we all know as Mick Foley, was there in the beginning of his career, and he even took up, even like looked at it at a, in a way like positive way, like, well, all those empty seats, it gives me more room to work, kind of thing. You want to look on the bright side. So, but this is like I said, this is like a caution. It should be like a cautionary tale. I mean, all people that want to be promoters, want to open up their own wrestling promotion. This should be the cautionary tale. Everybody should should watch his story. Or even just watch this. Just watch this episode of Dark Side of the Ring, and you'll know what not to do. Is that would that help? No, because everybody's a creature of habit, and they're going to do what they're going to do. It's been like that since the dawn of time, where people just don't take care of themselves. People get too indulged into bad habits, and it affects their work, it affects their livelihood, it affects their families, whatever you want to call it. And this episode was very interesting. It's just like some other promotions that had wrestling shows, and I could vaguely remember them, and I've maybe watched it a handful of times. I've heard of UWF. I don't recall watching it. I may have, but it's just so far back, 30 years back, 1990, when it was founded. I don't remember, but he had a pretty good amount of superstars there. Lou Albano was there, the legendary Hall of Fame manager. Well, he was a wrestler too, but mainly known as a manager, especially when I grew up with wrestling. He was already a manager, so I didn't even know he was he was a wrestler, but he was. And you have all these guys with just hopes of relaunching their careers or keeping their careers going, and this guy just couldn't handle the business end. He couldn't, just do what you're supposed to do. Be responsible, pay the bills, pay your wrestlers, pay the venues, pay the wrestling crew, the camera crew, everybody. And he didn't. It was all about him. He wanted to buy all the cocaine. He wanted to buy all these, pay out, get all these hookers and these ladies of the night, these women. And it's not the first time. He's not the first person that's ever done that. You see money like that, you just think about what you can buy, not being responsible with it. But it was a very, very interesting episode, and it actually opened up my eyes to this chapter of wrestling. As short as it was, but it was, like I said earlier, it's like a cautionary tale. You follow this, you think about opening up a wrestling company, take a look at this, and this is what you do not do. But the way it ended, and I'll just finish up my my thoughts on this episode. And Mick Foley, when he was asked, because Herb Abrams unfortunately passed away at the age of 41, and it was because of a heart attack by a cocaine overdose. And there was like conflicting stories that he had a heart attack when he was being handcuffed and arrested. That they said that he died in the car, police vehicle. They say he died in prison. He had a massive, coronary stroke, something like that. And then Mick Foley was asked, what would he be doing? Herb Abrams, if he was alive today. And Mick Foley kind of looked up, and he was like, and he laughed, and he said he'd be doing time. Because he said that, Herb Abrams wasn't going to slow down. He wasn't going to care about nobody but himself, and that was going to pretty much get him in trouble. And then he said that he would even, have a Herbie cookie and some milk, and because they were trying to compete with WWE and the ice cream bars, and so they had their own cookies, which was pretty corny and hokey the way they would announce it. Like the oh, what was the way you would be Brian Blair oatmeal cookie, and because he was known as the Killer Bee, so they said with honey, and it's just so over the top corny, and they wanted to get into ice cream bars, but then ice cream bars, and then their cookies were doing okay, so they decided not to. It's just a lot of a lot of just stuff that he was just trying so hard to compete with WWE. Even to this day, no one can right now. There are some companies like AEW that can. There's some other promotions like NJP, New Japan, and some others that could, but they always make mistakes. They always try too hard instead of just building up your own brand, your own company, your way. And then people are gonna flock away from WWE to you because a lot of people are tired of WWE. If you just do your thing and what you said you're going to do in the first place, because I think AEW is kind of going away from their original plan, and they're not now trying to compete by doing these crazy cinematic type matches, which right now is what's being done because of the inability to have a you know match wrestling events because of the whole COVID thing. But you know, if you're going to compete, you need to do it by a different way and not try to compete by copying what WWE does. But that's that. And like I said, I did enjoy the episode, and very very unique look at this forgotten period of wrestling. I mean, forgotten for me, maybe definitely a number of fans who have probably forgotten about UWF and Herb Abrams and what went down, you know. But for those of you who stopped by and checked out my video, I appreciate it. And in closing, as always, take care. Please remember to subscribe, click like, and click the bell icon for all notifications on this channel.